How's this? I have the, okay. Hi, everybody. My name is Randall. REA was my uncle. Before I knew him as REA, as I think a lot of you did, I knew him as my Uncle Ronnie. I want to start by thanking Mark and Marty for letting us gather here in their beautiful yard, in their home. And just note that there is still food and there are bathrooms inside of the house. There are signs up directing you to one of two bathrooms. So please, whatever happens here, feel free to get up and move around and get food and take care of yourself and use the bathroom. Now I'm going to look at the piece of paper. I have been to Durango many times over the 40 years that or so that REA lived here. And I have always come to this valley as I do today as a guest. I come from Vancouver, British Columbia at the moment, and I am carrying a habit that I have learned there of naming the ground that I'm standing on, the people whose ground it is. REA and I were both born in Kansas City on Osage and Kaw land, to an Ashkenazi family who came a century ago from the Pale of Settlement. Today we are gathered here along the Animas River in the homeland of the Nuchu, whose history begins in this valley and who have been here since time immemorial. REA, as I think you all know, loved the river. He walked along the river. He lived along the river, and the river called him back here. And to love a river is to know that it runs through other people's lives as well. So I want to begin by thanking the Nuchu and their neighbors whose relationship to these waters precede us and continue and intertwine with ours. And I begin too in the tradition of REA's family and my family. Zichrono livracha, may his memory be a blessing, of saying his names out loud. REA, Ronald Allen Margolis, Uncle Ronnie, and of telling the truth about a life that we loved. And a quick note about the names. My uncle's parents gave him both names, Ronald and REA, just as my parents gave me both the names Randall and Eliezer. I had a hard time learning to call him REA because it was not grounded in my experience of him. But when I was an adult and I observed him introduce himself as REA to my partner and to my friends, I made a conscious effort to adopt it. REA is Hebrew for lion. It's aptly descriptive, I think, especially during the years in which his mane was the most glorious. And he preferred that name. But he also really did not mind being called Ron. And Ron itself is a Hebrew word, which means song of joy. And I think that is what he wanted to be. So while you're here and while we're remembering him, you can call him either. And I think that we will know who you're talking about. I already talked about the bathrooms and the food. several of you let me know that you wanted to share some thoughts about REA. And so we might call some people up who let us know in advance, but I want to make sure that you all feel welcome. This is a loose structure, and we're all here to remember REA and to share whatever we want to share. So please don't be shy if you feel moved. Also, my mother and I and some wonderful friends have spent the last several days going through REA's belongings, most of which have been given to charitable organizations, which was his wish. But we have pulled out some special objects. And I think you've all had a chance to be over on the other side of the patio where we have them out. We thought that he might want these items to be stewarded by the people that he knows and loves. REA hated disposable commodities. He rejected a life whose purpose was the acquisition and accumulation of stuff. But he loved beautiful things that were crafted with care and love. And he kept precious mementos and ceremonial objects. And so if there's something there that moves you or reminds you of REA, we invite you with all of our hearts to take it and to keep it. He would have wanted you to have it. And also there's lots of books, which are also precious, but there are many, many, many books. And they're out on the carport. And similarly, please take a look and take anything that you might want. And for those of you that might feel moved to help us return REA's corporeal remains to the earth, we invite you to take some of his ashes. No pressure. But we have his ashes distributed in the white envelopes on the table where the photos are. And we invite you to spread them in a place that you know is special to him, or in a place that you think he may have liked, or a place that he might have wanted to go. REA loved to do tarot readings, and this weekend I came across a journal that was full of tarot readings that he did for himself on each of his birthdays for each of the last at least 15 years. And he would draw out the cards and he would write pretty extensively about his interpretation. And the headings of each of those journal entries read tarot reading May 18th, 2016, after 68 years of existence, or tarot reading May 18, 2021, after 73 years of existence, for instance. So before I ask others to speak, I want to share a curated list of just a few of the other items that we encountered in REA's 2 storage units after almost 78 years of existence. There was the teddy bear that he slept with as a child, in which his mother had stitched for him when he was about the age that I am now. There was the invitation to his bar mitzvah, his diplomas. There was a handwritten pleading to the DC Circuit Court seeking expungement of the record after a DC cop who was directing traffic away from a Vietnam War protest arrested him, unlawfully, I might add, I am a lawyer, for making a rude gesture out of the window of his car. And in the pleading, he insisted that he was simply pointing in the direction that he wanted to go and asking for permission to pass. We will never know. There was his federal ID from his days as chief counsel at U.S. Customs. In the photo, he looks about as stern as you could hope, for a 25-year-old with a giant Jufro and a handlebar mustache. I imagine it's the same ID that he used to flash when boarding planes to do custom inspections in the Caribbean, with a big bag of weed in his pocket for the hiking that he planned to do after the work was done. There was a framed photograph taken from the top of a cliff next to a waterfall. It's a photograph that's over on the table there that he might have shown some of you. It's somewhere in Maryland. It's facing down a sheer drop of 70 feet or so. At the bottom, tucked among the rocks, is the slot of a pool that Aryeh fell into right after taking the picture. And he took his survival of that fall as either a miracle, showing that he had some purpose to fulfill other than being a U.S. Customs lawyer, or as dumb, stupid luck that made life seem too precious and arbitrary to waste being a U.S. Customs lawyer. And either way, he always said that it was the moment he decided to listen to the part of his heart that had been telling him to leave it behind and go find something else. There are hundreds and hundreds of books about dreams, consciousness, environmental and social collapse, ancient aliens, tarot, betting against the market, hero quests, reconstructing masculinity, spiritual teachers, Native American legends, hiking trails. I recognized among them many of the books that he sent me: the Tao Te Ching, Earth Wisdom, Meetings with Remarkable Men, Love Without Conditions, Reflections on the Christ Mind, Man in the Water of Life, The Jew in the Lotus, Leaves of Grass. These were all books that he sent me when I was too young to even consider reading them, but also too young to understand the intent behind them, which was to give me a head start in caring for my spirit. There was a small bronze coin from the Roman Empire that had been crudely mounted into a pendant, which he acquired at some point during his travels and which he believed was a lucky charm. And he gave it to me to wear when I took my own derivative backpacking trip through Asia, when I took a break from university. And in my memory, I had lost it on that trip. And I apologized to him for that at one point last year when we were spending more time together. And we cried about it together, and he forgave me. But there it was this weekend in the top drawer, protected in a plastic bag inside of a precious little embroidered pouch, alongside all of his expired passports, which are also over there on the table, and a couple of beautifully preserved sand dollars, and what I'm pretty sure is a handwritten accounting of every debit card transaction he made between 2016 and 2021, because he just didn't trust banks. There was a regular security envelope with words written on it, in his tiny, meticulous script, centered perfectly on the front and a neat circle around it. And inside, there were dozens of pieces of paper of various sizes at various stages of aging, covered top to bottom in several columns with words and their definitions, presumably copied from the dictionary with no apparent organizing logic. Assuage, dichotomous, eminence, alacrity. There were thick, meticulously organized folders of research about fluoridization of water. There were 3 boxes marked Vision Quest blankets, filled mostly with beautiful wool blankets of various designs. There's a few of them here. I realize it's probably too sunny for people to want to sit down in front, but these are also up for grabs. I lived with him for a brief time one summer in a spot, and these cushions here were his living room furniture. But this box said Vision Quest blankets. And all I really know about his vision quests is that one time he spent 3 days in the mountains, having been told by a guide that he should be attentive to an encounter with his spirit animal. And then after the eagles and the bears that he had imagined wouldn't speak to him, he came to understand that his spirit animal, at least on that vision quest, was a horsefly. There were so many journals, half full or only just started, with labels like dreams, ideas, inspiring myself and others, important thoughts about education, earth preservation, and spirituality. There was a portfolio of his beautiful tile work. The summer that I was 18, I asked him if I could live with him and be his apprentice before I started university. I figured he was always talking about the importance of learning a trade and how hard could it really be. And he was rightfully skeptical, but he agreed. And I learned that my free-spirited uncle was a meticulous planner and a demanding employer who insisted on an orderly workspace. I was a slow learner, and I could never really get the grout to mix to the right consistency, and I was really bad at cutting complex corner pieces of tile. And after about a month, he paid me my full summer's wages and suggested that I hitchhike to the Rainbow Gallery, which I did. There was a lot of river gear, an inflatable boat and life vests and dry sacks and paddles. He loved the river and being on any kind of water. He missed my bar mitzvah because he had a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to join a group paddling the Colorado through the Grand Canyon, which I think irritated my mom at the time, but in retrospect, it was absolutely the right call. But he made it up for me 20 years later when I was living in Minnesota, and at the last minute, one of my friends dropped out of an ambitious paddling canoe trip in the Boundary Waters. We needed a fourth to make the portages make sense. And with 48 hours notice, REA dropped everything, flew to Minnesota, and became our wayfinder as we paddled against short October days and daily thunderstorms. There was a hand-painted People of Consciousness banner and a coffee can modified to take donations to cover event costs. There were supplements, exercise equipment, homeopathic remedies. He was committed to caring for his body, eating clean and organic foods, avoiding as best as he could processed foods and chemicals. He didn't trust conventional medicine, and he hated hospitals, though he was able to set that aside when I was young and fighting a serious illness to be with me and my mom while I recovered from surgery at a hospital in Michigan. And he had little choice. And when his life was compressed in an instant to almost nothing but hospitals and rehabilitation and medical protocols, he resisted the best he could, and he recruited me and others to bust him out of the various institutions that wanted him at long last to submit to their inevitability. But he never did. We found the remaining ashes of his beloved Maria Christina, which he committed to spreading far and wide, and which I will mix with an equal weight of his own ashes and scatter this summer when my wife and I are hiking in the Carpathians. 2 tennis rackets. I could never beat him. And there were many, many boxes of well-loved kitchen implements, cookbooks and spices. He cared a lot about food, about growing food and ensuring organic foods were available to the community, and also about making and eating good food. He taught me how to make green chili and how to grill a perfect salmon fillet. And he taught me the particular pleasure of stopping by the side of the road somewhere in Arizona Well, the storm clouds gathered to eat a sandwich made of excuse me, to eat a sandwich made of thick slices of cheese, a ripe avocado, and red onion on dense dark bread, all cut with a pocket knife. And then he let me drive his trooper as we chased the funnel cloud on the horizon, losing it in the darkness, and then finding it again in flashes of lightning over and over again, until we lost it for good. I'm gonna ask my mom to speak now.
Daddy. My son is a very tough act to follow. Okay, can you hear me?
Closer.
Closer? Like this?
Almost like kissing it.
Okay. I hope I've met most of you. I'm Terry Margolis Cohn. I'm Ron's older sister and only sibling. And as Randall did, I want to first thank Marty and Mark. This setting is fabulous. Marty and Mark worked so hard the last couple days with us to clear through Ron's things, and I also want to encourage you to please take many of his beloved things. Otherwise, we just have to give them away, and I know he would be really pleased to have you take a part of him with you. My little brother was always Ronnie to me and to everyone in Kansas City. He was always just Ronnie, never Ron, never Ronald, never Aryeh. So I will refer to him as Ronnie. We grew up in side-by-side bedrooms in the same suburban home with the same bright, artistic parents. Our mom was described, sorry, I wish I didn't have to read it. Our mom was described by the neighbors as June Cleaver because she was always dressed to the nines in full makeup, even wearing high heels, while going out to get the mail, take the trash, or standing in front of the stove. Our daddy was musical and entrepreneurial and loved to tell corny jokes. Both were obsessively neat. I think Ronnie and I were about as different as two siblings could be. The mother he described was definitely not the mother that I knew, and the same with our dad. I think this is typical with siblings. Ronnie and I often disagreed and lived in two different worlds, but there was always an underlying deep love. Since I'm the only person here who knew Ronnie as a child, I thought I would lighten the mood and fill you in on a few things that you might find interesting about his early life. We had a blessed childhood in Kansas City with two loving parents who were strict and had high expectations. We were always to be dressed in cute outfits, always had to be mannerly, always had to say our prayers at night, always had to say bless you after somebody sneezed. We always sat down for dinner together as a family every night. We ate what was put in front of us, or we would sit at the table until we had. And I sat until 10 o'clock many nights. And we were expected to do well in school. We grew up on a long street filled with kids, and we were always outside playing with our neighbors. We were especially blessed because we had all 4 of our grandparents in the same city with us and 12 first cousins to grow up with. We were at both grandparents' houses almost every Sunday and shared many family holidays. When Ronnie was a little guy, he couldn't pronounce my name, and he always called me Turvey. And all the way up until right before he died, if we were ever having a good conversation that ended in a nice note, he would call me Turv. And I knew that all was well between us, which it wasn't always. Ronnie rode his tricycle backwards. And this is Teddy, who he slept with every night. And as Randall said, our mom had Teddy refurbished and gave it to him. I have a picture of him just ecstatic when she gave it to him when he was in late adulthood. He loved that bear. And if anybody wants Teddy, I'm not going to take him home. Ron played the clarinet. He drummed on the kitchen table incessantly with his thumbs and drove us all crazy. He loved horses, and he had a collection of toy horses in his room, and he always begged for a pony. He never got that pony, but he used to run around the house like this. Giddy up, giddy up, giddy up, giddy up. He used to want me to watch cowboy movies with him every Saturday on TV, and we had a special whistle that would signal when we were both up in the morning. He would whistle, and if I was up, I'd answer with the whistle, and then we'd both jump out of bed, go downstairs, turn on the TV to watch Hopalong Cassidy or Roy Rogers or Gene Autry. Ronnie did not like doctors, as most of you have found out. I remember watching our mother chase him down the hall of a doctor's building when it was his turn to get a shot. I reminded him of that recently, and he corrected me and he said, no, it wasn't the doctor, it was the dentist. But he remembered running away too. He loved to play basketball. His best neighborhood friend was as short and stout as Ronnie was tall and thin. They looked like Mutt and Jeff, and they were always on our driveway, shooting hoops. Ronnie went to Hebrew school, had a bar mitzvah, he was a Boy Scout. When I was a young teenager, I really thought of him as a pest. He loved to remind me how when my girlfriends would come over to listen to records in my room on my stereo, and he wanted to join, I would chase him away with my hairbrush. He recently told me that too. I don't remember it, but I believe him. I went away to the University of Texas in Austin, and I loved being there. So during his senior year of high school, he and a couple of his buddies drove down to visit me and to look over the school. And because I was involved in Greek life there, I introduced Ronnie to the guys that I thought were in the coolest fraternity. He followed me to the University of Texas and became a member of that fraternity. But you probably can't picture him being a fraternity guy. He followed the frat rules. He was clean shaven. He was beautifully dressed. But not only was he in that fraternity, but he was chosen as a representative of his fraternity to be in an honorary campus-wide fraternity that was called Silver Spurs. It still exists, by the way. This was a big deal, a big honor, because each fraternity only had a couple of people that were chosen to represent them in the university. And the university at the time, I think, had close to 60,000 students. So it was a small group of guys. And the Spurs, as we called them, were chosen on the basis of high academics, being well-liked, etc. It was a service organization, and their main job was to be in charge of Bevo, which was a live, huge longhorn still the mascot at the University of Texas, and bring this longhorn onto the grounds when a football game was going to start. And Ron was in charge of doing that. And these guys on football days would walk around campus in their Silver Spurs outfits. So he had his Stetson hat, his orange cowboy shirt, a big cowboy belt with a fancy buckle in the middle, wheat jeans, we call them light-colored jeans, cowboy boots, and silver spurs. And he would walk around campus like that, proudly. Different life than you knew. Everyone on campus knew who these guys were. During those 4 years, he dated a darling girl, president of her sorority, of course, who became his first wife, and who went with him to Washington, D.C., where he started law school at Georgetown University after graduating with a degree in economics. Our dad, who was the son of immigrants and could never afford to go to graduate school, was so proud that he was a lawyer and was crushed when he dropped out of law and really never understood. In the 2 years after his accident, when his short-term memory was deficient, I would try to direct our frequent phone conversations to our childhood memories. We would both giggle a lot, and he would thank me for those lighthearted conversations. Since his passing, I have realized, like all of you who have lost a sibling, that I've really lost the only person in the world who holds and shares my childhood memories, and that's what I'll miss the most. I love knowing that Ronnie found a wonderful family here in Durango with all of you in this beautiful place, which became his home. So I want to thank all of you for being such an important part of his life and for being here to honor him today. And a special thanks to all of you who have reached out to me. So again, please feel free to take a memento. And if the wind ever blows you anywhere near Kansas City, we've got lots of space. We'd love to have you. Now I'll go ahead. Now I have some brief messages that I'd like to read that were sent from some of Ronnie's friends who knew him as a child who couldn't be here. We had a small dinner at our home for the Kansas City contingent that he had kept close with and our cousins. This first one is from Robert Bloom, who is Ron's oldest friend. I recently asked Ronnie, what's your first memory in your life? And it was with Robert. So he said, my name is Robert. I live in Kansas City. I'd like to begin by sharing my condolences with Terry and Steve, Ron's nephews, and all the Durango community friendships that he made over the last 30 plus years. Durango suited Ron in so many ways. He thrived there with a loving community and likeness and thought. He was a positive influence for everyone, and we can all be thankful we knew him. Ron was my oldest and longest friend. Just a week ago, Ron would have celebrated his 78th birthday, May 18th, 1948 was when he was born. My birthday was May 14th of the same year. At the time, our families lived in the same apartment complex. Terry remains my sister's best friend, True, my travel buddy, with only 6 days between their birthdays. Our families have continued our close relationship ever since. Ron and I grew up on different sides of the state line, going to different schools and having different friends. But finally, we attended the same high school. I still didn't get to see him that often in school because Ron always excelled in school and most everything he attempted. He was in advanced classes, and that was probably the reason I didn't run into him. He seemed to do better in everything. We were both on bowling leagues, but he brought home the trophies. Ron played basketball in school, but just missed the top spot. During the summer, Ron got a job laying ceramic tile unrelated to anything he had done before. It suited him because Ron had a strong type A personality. His bosses liked him. His work was meticulous. Every cut he made was right on. I've seen pictures of his tile work in Durango, and it was impressive. His room, his clothes closets, and personal belongings were always organized. That used to drive me crazy. I was inspired by his neatness, but it never carried over to me. You can't change genetics. When Ron graduated college and left for law school and eventually a career job at the Treasury Department in Washington, D.C., he became disheartened with the way of government, and he bought a ticket on a cargo ship to India, where it changed his life forever. It opened his eyes to the world. He continued to travel, eventually hitting every continent. The travel was the determining factor in Ron's life. He wanted to make a difference. He wanted to help people in their condition. He wanted to protect the environment, all living things, and he had a strong feeling for elephants. He couldn't stand the government that was screwing everything up, and he worked hard to correct it. I was grateful he found a companion with Maria Christina. She was the right person for him and he for her. They both visited Kansas City, and I got to meet her. His friends in Durango helped him through her health situation, and I want to thank them very much. This was very hard for him. In closing, Ron's unfortunate car accident could have happened to any of us. It was a miracle he was saved. He was not his full self, and he knew it. In one respect, wouldn't we all like to check out the way it happened to him, naturally in his sleep? I think he would have wanted it that way. Rest in peace, good friend. This next one is very short. This is from Jeff Dorfman, who was one of his closest friends in high school, and he was one of the guys that came with him down to the University of Texas and went with him to Texas, same fraternity, etc. My friendship with Ronnie lasted 63 years. Most of the years passed by with a phone call and 30 minutes of catching up and discussing the calamity of our human world. He also had interest in talking about some mundane stuff like KU basketball and the local pro sports team. Ronnie never wavered from his values, honesty, kindness, and empathy for others. I'm sure that's why we remained close. We talked for many hours about concerns we shared regarding the ills that surrounded society today. We all relate to this and weave through the best we can. Recently at my gym, a person asked me if I was Christian. I answered that I'm Jewish. I told him that my belief is that if you're nice to everyone and you're honest and respectful, it doesn't matter what religion you claim. He said he liked that. I think that would describe Ronnie's philosophy and approach to his life. All of us have been impacted by this nice guy, and we're better people for having had his friendship. This one is from Mark Siegelman. Some of you may have met Mark. He came through Durango twice in the last 2 years after Ronnie's accident in, I understand, a Tesla Cybertruck, which, believe it or not, he got Ronnie to drive in. He was the younger brother of Ron's first wife and remained a dear, dear friend. He said, Ron to you, was my short-term brother-in-law and long-term friend. Like he and my sister, we were far from a match made in heaven. He was always so laid back. He made the most ardent type B personality look like type A. Different opinion from his other friend. I am of the latter persuasion, occupational hazard, so imagine how he made me look. By the way, Mark is a retired pathologist in Dallas, Texas. I was still in high school when he took me on a whirlwind road trip tour of East Coast schools. He was looking at law, me at veterinary schools, my dream job until I got sucked into science. For him, I believe, a job he couldn't have dreamt of less. What kind of college guy goes to the trouble of lugging a green high school kid from El Paso, Texas, across the country? Ronnie, that's who. It began with a flight to Kansas City and a short stay at Ronnie's home. His parents, Helen and Jack, were so friggin' nice that I seriously plotted to have them adopt me. I'll spare you any blow-by-blow, but suffice it to say that the trip included a litany of adolescent rites of passage, including my first pot experience, wandering aimlessly in a Kansas City golf course, late at night, of course, puking on the side of the road after buying and guzzling a cheap bottle of scotch somewhere in New Hampshire. Maybe Jeff remembers more, the Jeff that I just read from. And at some point barreling eastward, hell-bent on reaching the tail end of the Woodstock Festival. Then listening to the radio, warding off all due to torrential rains, turning the entire site into a mud pit. Yeah, we missed the best part. 5 decades of regret to repeatedly rally around, even up until the end. It would be a gross understatement to say Ronnie had a problem with authority. Jump forward to D.C. Ronnie in law school, me on a college work-study gig, living part-time with he and my sister, but mostly at the NIH as a normal control volunteer. That is, I was a human guinea pig for the government. Wish I could tell you the exact provocation, something trivial like rolling through a stop sign or running through an orange light, but flashing red lights and a siren behind us. Ronnie's response? In a dilapidated old mini station wagon, it was, "Let's slip these assholes." Pedal to the metal through the tortuous narrow streets of Georgetown, and lo and behold, after a harrowing but not too long while, they had disappeared. In retrospect, guessing the cops figured, do we really want to catch this lunatic? Nonetheless, I don't think I ever saw him more proud. Then there was his brief stint at the infamous accounting firm Arthur Andersen, an in-between gig out of law school. It was notable only for his abrupt resignation, taking the form of leaping on a table and declaring they were completely full of shit and the whole organization needed to be flushed. It wasn't until 2001, amidst the Enron scandal, that finally happened. But that didn't keep Ronnie from taking credit. Let's see. Don't think this experience did much to further endear him to the practice of law either. However, just because he turned away from the practice of law, do not conclude that he did not have a deep and abiding devotion to justice and equity. Case in point, Ronnie and my sister adopted a Springer Spaniel named Grover. Grover was a house, untrained, prodigious, and messy pooper. Ronnie devised a scheme dividing their tiny basement apartment into equal tertiles. On return from any activity, we were to shout out our dibs on the section we believed the poop not to be. And whoever of us was wrong got to clean it up. How is that not a fair and equitable distribution of labor? Ronnie and I were only intermittently in touch over the next many years after DC, including a few in-person visits. But maybe because of my degrees, I would randomly receive these drive-by emails. The topics ranged wildly from the medical cred of RFK Jr. Yeah, he was way ahead of his time on that. COVID, fluoride in public water systems, to the general unraveling and decline of human civilization. The emails were inevitably followed by lengthy phone conversations during which Ronnie patiently listened while I had to repeatedly remember he was too kind and gracious to do more than humor me. After some 50-plus years of intellectual and not-so-intellectual arguments, I'm pretty sure I never convinced him of a goddamn thing. Don't think I ever met anybody with so many near-death experiences, more lives than a cat. A product, at least in part, due to the full, unbridled life he led. Maybe he didn't benefit so much from surviving the last big one, the accident, but we did. We got to see the same kind, gentle, considerate, thoughtful guy Ronnie was always at his core. In his last year or so, Ronnie began to express premonitions of the coming of the end. Never to me with a sense of foreboding, fear, or even sadness, nor any inkling he would do anything to advance the cause, just as a matter of fact. Whenever we threatened to come out for a visit, his retort was always, "You better hurry, because I don't think I'm long for this planet." He had no known underlying life-threatening medical issues and vital signs in labs that any 30-year-old would have traded him for, hands down. So I always responded, "We'll take our chances." He had the last laugh. I don't know what lesson Ronnie was attempting to teach us about the end, but I do know he would have argued endlessly about what exactly that lesson was, or maybe he wasn't trying to tell us something so much as just show us that rare example of what it looks like to live life absolutely on one's own terms. I have two more really short. This one is from Richard Routman, who was a friend from Washington, D.C. He kept in close touch. I met Ron in 1974 when we were both working in Washington, D.C. My fondest memory of him was several years later when he quit his job and signed on as a worker on a cargo ship to get free passage bound for Europe or Asia, I forget which. The night before departing, he stayed with my wife and me at our apartment. At a very early hour the next morning, I waved goodbye from our second-story window, wishing him safe passage and getting a big smile in return. He was an exuberant, fearless, joyous, and an adventurous soul of a kind rarely seen then or now. And the very last thing, his good friend, oh, my phone is too hot, it won't let me. His good friend, Bill Plotkin, who wanted to be here, is ill today and sent a short message, which I can read later, but I did want to share something Bill said to me. When Ronnie passed away, I talked to Bill on the phone and or by email, and I said, "Bill, do you think somebody can will themselves to die?" And he said, "Yes, I do." But he said, "I don't think that's what happened with Ron." With REA, as he called him. He said, "I think he surrendered at a time that he knew was just right." And that gave me comfort. The other thing is people are telling me how sorry they are and how sad it was about Ron's passing. And I like to focus on the fact that he did have 75 and a half really good years, living life the way he wanted to, and in good health. That kid he was never sick. He was very lucky. And then to have a community like all of you, what a beautiful life. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Everyone and REA. I feel his presence quite strongly these days with everyone here, sharing their love for him. So my name is Julian. REA was one of my best friends, mentors, and I would say like a spiritual father. We met at the Dharma Center about 10 years ago, and we started hanging out weekly, calling each other daily, every other day, and really asking the deep questions of life. What's going on here? What are we doing? What does it mean to be a human? Some of the big curiosities for me, what does it really mean to be a man? Because growing up in Moldova in Eastern Europe and having a pretty challenging childhood where masculinity was macho, and I was really seeking the kind of men that exuded qualities that I knew I had somewhere in me, but that didn't know quite how to reach. So many of our sittings, many of our times together where we'd sit across from each other, looking eye to eye, spending 10, 15, 20 minutes in silence before we'd say anything. In those times, I'd find a question that would draw that very quality out. And one of those that I saw in him from the very get-go, from the very beginning, is the quality of trust. A very close cousin of surrender. And I would just ask him question about question. Tell me about trust. Tell me what you've learned. How did you travel to India? How did you hitchhike to India, out of all things? And it was amazing, the stories that he told and the trust and love that was exuded from his heart and being. And I kept on drinking of what he was sharing and those qualities, and slowly listening for those in myself. I had been planning on going to India already, and he was so excited when he found that out. He pulled out a projector and started showing me all the photos of his India journey, story after story, excitement after excitement. Anyways, that was a wonderful evening. Great dinners. So much to say about this human being. And I'll take a moment of silence. The last couple weeks, knowing that I'd be here and that I'd like to share something with you all, I was wondering, well, what am I going to share? What am I going to say? And before going to bed one night, I said, what do you want to share, Aryeh? What do you want to say? Let me be a mouthpiece. Let me listen to what you would like to share. And so I have something that came. Oh, and for the occasion, this is his hat. Oh, yeah. We kind of looked alike, too. He had some family from Eastern Europe, from Odessa area, I understood, and so we kind of look alike. I kind of enjoyed that part, too. Anyways. So I'm just going to preface this first a little bit. For Aryeh, life was something of a quest, an adventure, one that included mystery and magic, destiny and purpose, and a guidance that was the voice of the whole cosmos speaking through each living thing. From him, I learned that this mystery, this beauty, And the guiding current of each of our unique journeys is to be discovered through listening, through prayer. REA shared a story with me where a Hopi community had settled in the harsh environment of the desert. When the Hopi leader was asked, "Why did you settle on this barren land?" he replied, "Because it's a place where prayer is needed in order to survive." I feel like we are in a time like that right now in our world and in our culture, that the difficulties that we're faced with, the challenges, are really calling us into something deeper in ourselves. So we generally think of prayer as something to conjure up and asking for an outcome, a bending of life to fit our ideas. The way that Aria and I spoke about prayer, what if prayer exists deep within us already? It's that which gets us out of bed, that which has us grow through our struggles, that which has us persevere, and that which drives our lives forward. So in that spirit, here's what came that I felt like Ari may want to share. Again, this is also from my learning of him and my time with him. Listen for a prayer, something undeniably true. Let what you don't know or understand purify your heart. Listen deeply. Let the noise of the world fade. In the face of this great mystery we call our lives, let yourself be humbled. In wonder, what is the one true prayer that I cannot live without? In a world where we've forgotten what true nourishment is, in the midst of our living and beyond the end of our days, it is this prayer that will sustain us and be our sacred gift to the world.
So I failed to organize with everybody, but I'm seeing a couple of volunteers. So,
We just do popcorn
Faye,
style.
please, thank you.
I'm short. Oh, no, come on. Oh, no. All right, can you all hear me?
Yes.
Am I good? Okay. My name is Fish. Oh, you're supposed to, what I tell people is you got to kiss the microphone. I'm just going to hold it. Maybe easier. Kiss the microphone. Am I doing all right? Kiss, kiss, kiss. My name is Faye Schrater. I've known REA off and on since 2002, and I had some of my own health issues those last couple of years, and so I never got to see Ron then. But I have lovely stories. I met Ron on one of Bill Plotkin's vision quests, so I thank Bill for introducing me to Ron. I had just finished a 3-year program in core shamanism with Michael Harner, the Foundation for Shamanic Studies, and I was so out there and kind of lost. But so I heard about Plotkin and signed up for Vision Quest, and Ron was there. Now it's interesting that REA translates, if you will, as lion. And what I found on that Vision Quest was that REA was a strong but gentle lion. I was not in good shape for the altitude at that point, and every once in a while my pack would just overhaul me. And REA would come along. He's carrying his own 150-pound pack. That's an exaggeration, but he would just pick up mine and he would put an arm around me, and I would go on. So over the years, I did several gigs, if you will, with Bill Plotkin, and REA was involved in most of those. But in the between times, we would visit. We would have a meal. We would have conversations about life and spirituality and what are we doing, and are we doing as much as we need to do, and we just looked for answers. So my husband and I moved to Durango in 2003 and bought a 1923 bungalow that had sort of aged in place with the couple who owned it for over 50 years. So that was a lot of renovation. One of the renovations we did was in the kitchen, and I wanted tile put in on the if you will, on the backsplash between the counter and the cupboards. And REA did that for me, and I had selected these tiles, and then there was a space, about a 3-inch space between the tiles and the bottom of the cupboard. And REA said, why don't I just sort of put in these long, thin ones across there? And I said, I really would like a pattern, because he'd shown me some pattern tiles. And he said, Faye, nobody can see them. I said, REA, bend down here. Oh, all right, you can see them. And so every time I see those tiles, which is often every day, I think about REA. I have this physical reminder of him. So then fast forward to somewhere, I'm a master gardener, and I was a manager for Shared Harvest out on the Florida River. Maria Christina was one of the gardeners at the time, and then she and REA got together, and that was delightful. And I just sort of, I felt so strongly positive about the two of them. I did make some notes. Let's see if I forgot anything. Nope, I think that's it. So I just want to say to all of you that one of the things that I have learned, and I'm sure you all have, you're all old enough to have figured this out, that the people we love leave us, but we carry them in our hearts, and we carry that light in our hearts, and it makes this darkening world brighter. So, REA, love you, miss you, thank you all.
Hello. So good to see everyone and meet people that I have heard names spoken by REA, but have never met you in person. So it's great to put faces and names together. My name is Marge. I met Ron about 6 years ago at Durango Natural Foods, the place that he helped build and support. I had recently lost my husband, and somehow he knew that. And he came up and he said, "How's your heart?" No one had ever asked me that. That's something I've never forgotten. I was so touched by his question. A few weeks passed, and he tracked down my phone number from a mutual friend, and he called and he asked me to go on a hike. And that was the beginning of our friendship. I had known him through the Durango Dharma Center maybe 10 years ago or so. But REA genuinely had a very big heart. And he often spoke about wanting to do good in the world, to be of service, and to matter in some larger way. As you know, he participated on the City Planning Commission. He helped start was on the board of directors for Animas Valley Institute, on the board for Durango Natural Foods, and maybe others that I'm not remembering. One of my most vivid memories of Ron was a trip that we took together to Africa. As I mentioned, Ron really wanted to do good in the world. And he also wanted to do it at the best possible price. And Africa gave him an opportunity to practice both. Anyway, it's one of my favorite memories of him, and I'm really grateful that we had that journey together. Ron was complex, like many people worth knowing, but underneath that complexity was someone who wanted connection, who wanted to contribute, and who wanted to leave things better than he found them. And I'll hold on to that.
Hi, I'm Danielle, and it's so good to see all of us here together, sharing our memories of Ron REA. We met in 1983. He was with a girlfriend who was actually in the same age group as my children, and they were on their way to India. They came back, they weren't together anymore. I'd see him at the Dalai Lama, I'd see him at the park, I'd see him at the bookstore, and then for 5 years we hung out together in a very deep and sometimes dramatic way. We spent 1 year just driving around the country looking for another place besides Denver to live in. We went to the Maharishi University in Iowa City. We went to visit Terry and Steve, and I met the nephews, of which he was wildly in love with and very attentive to. We went to the Yogananda place in Grass Valley, to the World's Fair. We backpacked in Glacier down to the bottom of the Grand Canyon, and he helped push me up. He was so patient. It was amazing. And the Gila, and on and on and on. So a year in hostels, in tents, out of a car. And it was fun. It was great. He was a lover of wildness. Not being a wild person. No. He was a lover of wild animals and wild, uncultivated land. He was a minimalist. When I look around here, I'm surprised at all this stuff. But when I met him and we were in Denver, he must have been at the depth of his minimalist, because his bed was just a sheet on the floor, and that hurt. Anyway, we went to Lama. I went to Lama, and then he joined me. And I think that's when he realized he was more a theoretical community person as far as living together. He was really a loner in a lot of ways and spent a lot of time by himself. After our breakup and a little sorting through, you know how it is afterward, we became friends and talked. And when I moved away, we talked on the phone regularly. He brought Marge down to meet me. He brought Maria Christina. I stayed at their place. He was amazing how many friends he had. And what is really interesting to me is he never talked about his past. The list that you read, Terry, of all the accomplishments that he had as a young person, he almost never referred to them. He lived in the present. Now, one little present thing that I want to tell you about. When I met him in 83, 84, he was already predicting the crash of Wall Street. Have any of you ever heard that from him? I think it's so ironic that Wall Street is going through the roof and everything else is crashing. And he knew it, and my goodness, he waited for that, sometimes patiently and sometimes not impatient, sometimes impatiently. So he was an amazing man, a tenacious man, highly principled man, the only one like him. Agreed?
My name is Michael Rendon. I've known Ron for probably 30 years or so, and it's funny, we weren't super close, but I always knew him as, oh, that's that really nice guy who seems to save Durango Natural Foods every 10 years or so, and started People of Conscience during the war. And I remember going to a lot of those, and he was always really inspiring that way to me. And I knew Maria Cristina Gabriel de la Guardia a little bit better. An amazing human being as well, and I knew her from the college. She worked at the TRIO program, and then she got on the board for the Environmental Center and taught me how to make plantains, and just this wonderful woman. And then one day I saw the two of them together, and I was like, oh. And then I was like, oh yeah, that makes sense. I don't know if I believe in the soulmate sort of thing, but that's pretty close. I mean, talk about two really amazing beings that really loved each other. And she just kind of glowed after meeting Ron. And he with her, they really loved each other. They were really sweet. And so I'm really glad that I kind of got to be a part of that love story and watch it unfold. And the time that they had together was really lovely. And so I was thinking, there was a photo of Maria Cristina over here that's really quite lovely. And unless somebody else wants it, I thought I could take it and hang it up at the college, either in the TRIO Center or El Centro de Muchos Colores, where she was a part of as well. And that's a nice way for Maria Cristina and Ron to still be a part of Fort Lewis, and a lot of us that know them can carry on that memory. And then the other thing I was thinking, there's two little straps that have bells on them. And for the family that doesn't know me, I've also been a part of this gypsy band for over 20 years and play world music. And I'd like to take those, and then we could use them when we play live, and that'd be a nice idea for Ron. And I'll try and get them on the next record. That would be really fun. And then I wanted to end. My friend Brian Aarons, who's also in the band, he couldn't be here. He's traveling, but Ron officiated him and Tracy's wedding. So Ron did all sorts of fun things, and Brian wanted me to read this poem by Ralph Waldo Emerson called Success. And I said, well, why'd you pick that one? And he said, I chose that because Ron was an accomplished lawyer and could have had the more typical American version of success if he wanted, but instead he chose to touch people's lives and make a societal difference. And so this is Success by Ralph Waldo Emerson. To laugh often and love much. To win the respect of intelligent persons and the affection of children. To earn the appreciation of honest citizens and endure the betrayal of false friends. To appreciate beauty. To find the beauty in others. To leave the world a bit better, whether by a healthy child, a garden patch, or a redeemed social condition. To have played and laughed with enthusiasm and sung with exultation. To know even one life has breathed easier because you have lived. This is to have succeeded. Thank you.
Mine is really short and sweet. My amazing partner said to me this morning, Ron was a gold standard of guys. And I thought to myself, you know what? He was the gold standard of humans. And that's sums up all the stories I have in my memory of projects and organizations and all the many years from the early 80s when I met him till now. He was the gold standard of humans. What a great example.
My name's Mary Oswald, and I didn't actually think I was going to speak, but when I'm thinking of Ron, I met him probably, 25-ish years ago. As you guys probably all know, he was missing his little finger, and I met him because he walked into my clinic one day for therapy for his messed up finger. And I looked at his finger because he said, yeah, can you help me move my finger? And I look at this guy, and his finger is like dangling from his hand. It looks so bad. And I said, Ron, your finger is really messed up here. Have you shown it to the doctor? And he's like, well, the doctor said it's okay, that I just have to start therapy and moving it. And I said, I don't think so. I think it's really messed up here. And then come to find out that I also asked him at the time, because it's his first time in, okay, what's your insurance? And he didn't have any health insurance. So that's why the doctor, I hate to say it, but he didn't exactly get the best care for that finger. So he ended up having to get the finger amputated. So that started us on a course of seeing each other in therapy for a really long time. And so during the course of his therapy, I learned so much from him. For instance, at one point, the little bit of his finger that's left wasn't moving very well, and I happened to say offhand one day, I heard of this new technique where if I put a cast on that finger, which, you usually don't put a cast on something to get it to move better. A cast is put on to immobilize something, not to get it to move better. But I said, I just heard of this technique that if I put a cast on in a certain way, it can get your finger to move better. But I don't really know how to do it because it's a brand new technique. And he said, well, call up the person who came up with the technique. And I said, this is before the internet, I'm like, what do you mean? I can't just call this person up. And he's like, why can't you just call this person up? Call her up, Mary. And so I'm like, okay. And so I did, and I called her up, and she walked me through it, and I sent her some chocolates as a thank you, and it did get his finger to moving better. And then over the course of all this time, we talk about a heck of a lot more than his finger, We talked about his family, we talked about the importance of buying gold. Thank you, Ron. Thank you for that one. And then at the end, because he had no insurance, he kept saying, well, I'm going to have a settlement after this, so you'll get paid. I'm like, okay, whatever. So it all ends, and he didn't really get much of a settlement, So he said, you know, Mary, what I'm going to do? I'm going to take you out to lunch once a month. And so we went out to lunch once a month for probably 10 years. And we became so close during that time. I learned how much he appreciated you, Terry, when it came time to taking care of your mom, and how he would go to Kansas City all the time to help too, but he so appreciated everything you did. Randall, did you have something to do with Burning Man? He talked about you and Burning Man. He gave me ideas of books to read, and we talked about back pain and philosophy and differences in philosophy. And I will always love REA, because then he asked me to call him REA, and I will always love REA. So thank you, REA.
REA loved Xander. Every time I talk to him, he's always like, how is that wonderful dog of yours? I have written something, not too long to share, but so many people here have been so courageous to speak from the heart that I'm gonna give it a go.
Just pick up the microphone and hold it, and that way you won't put it back in.
Talking to REA, you could talk about the deepest topics, you know, prayer and grief and death and depth, and then somehow you would end up laughing hysterically. He had a way of being really deep and really joyful at the same time. One of my favorite things about REA was just simply talking to him. He was so interesting just in the way his brain worked and the way his heart worked and the way that they came together in the courage of who he was and how he lived. And I remember I met REA about, I think over 20 years ago. We were in a DreamWork intensive, Animas Valley Institute. We were participants, and they partnered us up. Who'd have thought? And we knew each other just a little bit here and there, and I didn't really start to spend time with him until after he lost Maria Cristina. So I never met Maria Cristina unless I did and didn't know it. But I feel like I did get to know Maria Cristina because when I started hanging out with REA, it was after he lost her, and a lot of what he talked about was her and their relationship. And so I felt almost like I was falling in love with her or with them at the same time as I was falling in love with REA, of hearing of this amazing love story and this love through death story. And REA taught me so much being with him, and I think one of the things that lives with me and lands with me the most is that he taught me a lot about what it is to be in a healthy, caring relationship, which is he could be fully himself because there was no stopping him. He was going to be himself, and he also had space for me to be fully myself, and that included where he asked questions and he really wanted to know who I was. And sometimes that made for, some chaos. We like to joke and laugh that he was REA the lion, and I don't know if you know, but my last name is Wild Bear. So we would joke, what happens when you bring a lion and a bear together? And then we would laugh, because it was kind of true. And one instance I remember in particular, I just was laughing at some of the things that were shared about his neatness and his organization. So if you imagine a big lion over his territory and everything was in order, and we would make dinner together. We made some lovely dinners together. We both love to eat and cook. But he had several sponges, and each had a very particular purpose. And I had to know what each of them were, which wiped which counter. And there was cutting boards for the onions and cutting boards for certain vegetables and other vegetables. It was a lot for a bear to take in. And I remember one evening we were cooking dinner for some friends who were going to come over, and the blender, I was making some butternut squash soup, but the lid sort of just exploded off, and I was taking one of the sponges, I'm not sure which one, and wiping the butternut squash off the wall. And he was like the lion that he was, which was deeply loving but could also be deeply ferocious, was trying to keep the ferociousness in calm. So that's just one story, but he really, we've been friends for so long, and I could always feel that he really loved me, and was true to himself at the same time. And that's not an easy task in this life, when we think about how many relationships, implode or cut off. And he really possessed the capacity to do that so exquisitely. And I didn't know I was going to say all this, but you all actually brought it out in me, what's been shared already. But here's what I wrote ahead of time. One thing I've been realizing is how hard it is to be in Durango without REA. So many places hold memories of him. I find myself seeing him everywhere. REA was a dear friend, and one of those people who always invited deeper questions about how to be, how to care, how to be more fully human. How to live, how to care, and how to be more fully human. REA influenced my life in many ways. Some of my favorite memories with my brother and nephew happened because he encouraged me to bring them to Durango and share this place with them, like he did for his family, for his nephews. He was also the kind of person who took time with people. He was a little old school that way. He wasn't much into texting. He wanted real conversation, real connection. When you were with REA, you felt that he was genuinely interested in you and in what mattered to you. I find myself remembering small moments from when Ari and I were housemates during early COVID times. He would go out to run an errand and come back carrying a chocolate cherry smoothie because he knew how much I loved them. He seemed to delight in giving it to me. It was such a simple gesture, but somehow it captured something essential about him. REA paid attention. He remembered what brought people joy and found quiet ways to care for them. I miss his voice. I still have voicemails from him saved on my phone that I haven't been able to listen to. And somehow my old phone has dialed his number several times recently, so I've found myself hearing his voice greeting. It makes me smile and ache at the same time. I think that's what grief often is, love continuing after someone is gone. And I feel grateful for having known him.
I too feel grateful for having known Ron. I refer to him as Ron, and that's the only name I've known him under. But the other day, a little closer, yeah. So the other day I get a text or an email from you, I guess, referring to him as Aryeh. And I didn't know that name. And I almost pressed the delete button. But you're referring to this gathering, and so here I am, and I just wanted to say a few words about him. I first met Ron 5 or 6 years ago at the home of Tim and Ann Wheeler. Get together every year for Thanksgiving dinner. I know my wife and I look forward to that dinner well before the time comes. And Ron was a part of that dinner for the last few years, as far as, I don't know how many, but the last few that I've been there. And it was a wonderful gathering. Just the five of us, Tim and Ann, my wife Sachiko and I, and Ron. And in a group of that size, everybody gets to say their piece, and everybody feels that he's been listened to. And it was nice to get together. But mainly I got to know Ron more recently, more in the last 2 years. I would call him up and say, well, how about some breakfast? And usually he was willing and able. 20 minutes later I'd drop by and we'd jump in my car and take off for someplace to eat. I'd have given him 20 minutes to think about where he wanted to go to eat. He would have no idea, so I had a few places to suggest. And usually I'd suggest some place that involved a little bit of a drive. We'd go to some place like the mountain, it's called the Nugget Bar. We'd go there for their filet mignon sliders and crab cake sliders. That was about a 30-minute drive just this side of Purgatory. Ron was, when I asked him for suggestions, I say he didn't have any, but he did have one. He recommended a place in Vallecito that one of you must have taken him to because he remembered it very well. He knew the menu, knew that the first half of the menu was going to be Mexican vegetarian dishes. And so that's where we went. I remember it was a restaurant, both indoor and outdoor, but at the same time it was also a market and a gas station. I'd never heard of it, but we had a wonderful time. And now thinking back on it now, I'm just kind of surprised that we never went back there because we certainly enjoyed the meal. Getting there was kind of half the fun because we had half an hour to ourselves in the car. And when you're sitting next to a person in the car and there's no other sound, you can have great conversations, and we did. One of the things that we had in common was Asia. Ron had spent, I don't know how much time, but he talked about it a lot, his time in India and other parts of South Asia. And I, as part of my job, had traveled the Asia-Pacific region for about 10 years. And so, in fact, at one point, we talked about the possibility of the two of us going to that part of the world, just the two of us, and looking up old places that we'd been to, looking up friends that we'd known over the years. And it might even have happened had Ron not decided to go on a trip on his own. Other restaurants we went to, the Bottom Shelf Brewery in Bayfield. If you haven't been there, great hamburgers and the best onion rings I've ever had in my life. It was just great getting to know Ron. And as he and I talked about, it's not often that people get to know each other, make friends, become good friends in the later stages of their lives. Looking back on the friends that we have, they're usually friends that we made in high school or maybe even in college, but not when you're in your 70s and you're, in my case, my 80s. So I really appreciate the fact that I had a chance to, through Tim and Ann, get to know Ron, and we just became good buds, and I miss him dearly. Thank you.
So just a couple things. The finger. Best I can recall, he was doing tile at my house. And I had gone to town to pick something up, I being the tile assistant. and he was mixing mortar and caught his finger in the twisty thing that mixes the mortar on the drill, and it tore his finger up. And so by the time I got home, he was gone to first aid. But we always shared that
Gift.
interesting moment together. The tile work he did for us was magnificent, and he taught me while we were doing it, and that was pretty cool too. Number two, he cautioned me so strongly and showed me with such clarity about his concern about the economy and the Elliott wave and how it was all going to play out. And every year, we would mention to each other that it hadn't happened yet. And every year, it was imminent. And every year, it hadn't happened yet. And so, over the last couple of years, we touched on that while we were sitting in his hotel room. And he was a little bit frowning about that. And I said, don't worry, you won't remember this conversation anyway. And that was the peak of our evening together that time, that we would laugh, because I wasn't shy about his short-term memory. And he consequently could just be not in control. Somebody who had a magnificent mind, whose mind was behind all the things that we've heard today, and now it wasn't functioning the way he knew himself to be. But I kept reminding him, you can be who you are now, and every time I come see you, we can enjoy it again, because you won't remember. And he'd laugh, and I'd laugh, and we'd have a great time together. I think we were friends, but I think our gears didn't quite work perfectly together. We would have differences of opinion, and he was stubborn. There were moments when he was trying to convince me that every single person in the government was corrupt, that they were all to be punished and banished or something. And I was like, well, they're human beings. Some of them are doing the best they can. Some of them are joining together with others to try to serve the people's needs. And I'd met some of them. And, he's like, "Arr." And so we didn't meet eye to eye there. We didn't meet eye to eye about a number of things that he was passionate about. But I always enjoyed that grinding of the gears, because and then sometimes we would kind of step around things that we didn't agree on, because it was more pleasant to hang out and laugh together. I was encouraging him to get out of his head and into his feet. And in the last year, I would show up at his hotel room, and oh my God, it was dark, hot, stuffy, and I'm like, Aryeh, what are you doing? And I'd throw the door open, I'd pull the drapes open, I'd open the windows, I'd get the air moving, I'd say, come on outside, we're gonna do a little qigong together. And he would come along, but at that point, I think he was already tapering himself slowly, like he was done. And I think he was tapering off. And something passed through my mind and is now gone.
Join the club, eh?
Anyway, I hope his bardo was smooth, but I also hope it was challenging in the appropriate way. And I hope that the people who manage bardo were not too disturbed by his stubbornness. Thank you very much.
I just want to take a moment to acknowledge that I mean, well, this has been amazing, and I'm not asking folks who still want to speak to not speak, but I want to just remind and encourage folks to get up and use the bathroom, and get water, and take care of yourselves. And if you are there others who would still like to speak? Okay, great. So we've got a few. So that's excellent. Okay, I just want to say, I'm off script now, but I just want to say that as I'm thinking, I of course also spent a lot of time with him in the last couple of years, and what came through in all those conversations at the core, whether he really knew that the end was coming, whether he really believed that the banks were stealing from him, what came through in the heart of all of those conversations and encounters was a need to express his gratitude, and that, I don't think any of us believe that he was particularly repressed in his expressiveness prior to the accident, but he was really fully freed to say thank you and I love you over and over and over and over again in every conversation, except for the ones that end with, why are you stealing from me, or why are you? But I mean, then immediately when those happened, he had no compunction, nor did he in his pre-injury life, of asking for forgiveness if he remembered that he said it. And and so I just wanted to evoke that, because there was a real lesson in that for me. There's a few more people who want to speak, so I don't think we're going to take a break, but please take care of yourselves.
I wrote a little script. Dear REA, today we celebrate you and all you have done and given to our community and to our world. You have offered so much to so many. I first met you on the basketball court in the 80s. You were a good player and turned out to be a really good friend and ally for me. We had so many similar interests. Thank you for introducing people to so many new ideas and perspectives. Thanks also for your help with the fluoride campaign. We did that together. Durango Natural Foods, Good Dirt Radio, helping to raise people's consciousness, and for helping all those elephants. Thanks for being here with us, and thanks for being you.
I'm Roger, and I'm here from Paonia, and so I have not gotten to have as much time with REA as I would have liked, but I met him at remember the Harmonic Convergence, I think it was 1986 or so, and shared a sweat lodge with REA on the Colorado River near Castle Rock in Utah, and shared some very deep conversations with him right away. Anna and I shared a sweat lodge with him on the Animas River, where he used to live right there on the river for a few years. And I would say that he was probably the most authentic, true friend. He just really always remembered everything I shared and would ask me about it again whenever we spoke on the phone, which was regularly through the years, especially the last few years of his life. And all the things that people have shared are just so true, that he was just a true example of a good human. His values and his integrity, his principles, and his services. So I'm just really grateful to be here and get to hear all of these stories. I love you, REA. I'm going to miss our conversations, and I'm so grateful for his numerous visits to Paonia to connect with me, and his tremendous heart.
My phone cooled down enough for me to read the short message from Bill Plotkin. He said, "Although I can't be with you in person today, I'm nonetheless with you as you celebrate REA and his life. And I'm joining you in the celebration of all of life, more generally, including the ways I witnessed REA enhancing life through the shared heart and the embodied soul, by service to others and the more than human world, through his art, by forgiveness, by community building, by the ecstatic embrace of the mysteries, and by the embrace of death as well. REA fed the world generously and graciously in these ways. I learned so much from REA during the blessing of our long friendship." I wanted to remind all of you that it would do our hearts good if you would please take something, take many things, the pillows, the blankets, all of the things. Take some remembrance of him if you choose. We really encourage that. And there's still lots of food back there. And thanks again for all of you for coming. I don't mean to be ending this, so if anybody wants to continue, but I did want to remind you of those things. Thanks.
I just want to let you know I'm taking all of it, so you don't have to worry about that. My name's Nancy, and I keep trying to. So how did you know him? People here have been asking, how did you know him? And it's like, I don't know. He's just like, he was just here. He was part of Durango and an essential part of Durango. Like the river is an essential part. He felt like he was an essential part to me anyway. And in my time here. I don't know, when I think of him too, I just think of just really soft power. He's a very, very powerful person, and it always felt like his power spanned so far beyond this life. He's one of those people, for me anyway, that when I would meet him, there was just always this yes, of course. I don't know what any of this means, but I just really appreciate. Oh, also, we went to high school together. I went to Shawnee Mission East, so we bonded over that. We're both Lancers, yeah. And it was, and of course it didn't. I still knew the Lancer song, fight song, and so we'd sing that together. But he also would, we talked about the whole where we grew up in that particular suburb. They had done a brilliant job of redlining, So there were no, I would tell this story about growing up in grade school. There were no, I could tell you the one kid's name who was Jewish in my grade school, but I couldn't tell you the black kid's name because there weren't any black kids. I mean, it was a very, yeah. So, you know, he had a great way of expanding conversations to see the totality of and was not superficial. He was a very deep individual, and yeah. And I don't really feel like he's gone from here, although he is gone from here. The only other thing is sometimes I get like really, especially if something has happened that's made me sad, I just get really wrapped up and chatty. And so, sometimes I would run into him and he would just give me that look that would like cut through all of my yammerings and just settle me into a depth, and I'll miss that grounding that he had because he was so rooted to the core. So that's.
We will always be. Well, what I was going to suggest is REA always said matter-of-fact things about the natural world talking to him and potentially to me or to us. I'm conscious of the place that we are, and perhaps we could end by taking a moment to just listen and see if REA is talking to us. I mean, that's probably him, right? Thank you all so much for being here. Please don't hurry off.